Please identify yourself.
Peter Spiegel with the Financial Times. Sorry. General, can I ask you to talk a bit more about Misrata? You may have seen that the French foreign minister this morning was rather critical of NATO's efforts, particularly relating to Misrata, saying they have not struck enough of the heavy equipment, not cleared enough of the humanitarian aid for the city. Can you address those comments? And also, it sounds like what you were saying is that the threat in Misrata now is not so much what you briefed us on before, which is the heavy weaponry being hidden in the cities, but it's these hit-and-run tactics from the small trucks and light vehicles. Is that accurate? If you could elaborate there, thank you.
Yeah, of course, the situation in Misrata still is a big concern to us. But in the western part of Libya, Misrata is absolutely the #1 priority. We must understand that the port is still under opposition control and that humanitarian assistance is entering the city without escorts. So we have seen that tanks have been struck in Misrata. So the enemy knows if they use tanks, they're going to be hit. So that means that they are thinking before they are doing it. So that means that they are possibly going to use other tactics. But of course, we are closely watching that. And so far, I think for the humanitarian situation, it's to note that humanitarian aid is going into the city. And so far, NATO has not had a formal request from the United Nations to assist.
And as you heard the Secretary General saying yesterday, is the United Nations that has to play and is playing the lead coordinating role for humanitarian assistance. So what NATO is doing is contributing to that effort, the conflicting, but the UN is in the lead in that regard. Who is next, please?
Don Melvin, Associated Press. I wonder, General, if you can tell us to what extent different countries are having different rules of engagement for their forces, and to what extent that's complicating or even impeding NATO's job. We read a report today that says that airplanes from certain countries can enforce the fly zone but cannot bomb targets on the ground, that airplanes from another country can bomb air bases but no other type of targets on the ground, that planes from Libya have not dropped any bombs, that sort of thing. Is that hindering your ability to operate the way that you would like to?
Well, nations decide what assets they provide NATO to execute its operations. And with the assets provided by the nations, we have to execute our mission. And I think it's fair to say that we execute this operation in a very high operational tempo. And as I said in my opening remarks, we generate 155 sorties per day the last 7 days, of which more than 40% is strike sorties. And with these strike sorties, as you have seen the reporting over the last weekend, we have destroyed many tanks and many other targets have been hit. So it's for the nations to decide how they're going to contribute, with what assets. So it's a national decision with this regards, and it's not for us as NATO to have comments on that.
And that has always been a NATO principle, and this goes for all NATO-led operations.
Is that report that I've read essentially correct, that there is that range of that there are some planes that are not allowed by their national governments to bomb targets on the ground, for example, others that can bomb only certain types of targets? Is that correct?
It is for nations to talk about their national contribution. It's not for us to have any comments about that.
But without naming nations, General, is that the constraints under which you are now compelled to operate, that some nations who you need not name here have imposed such types of constraints?
We work with the assets we get, and that's with what we have to do and execute our mission.
Exactly. Any more questions? Yes, back to Financial Times.
I just wanted to ask you about another media report, if you don't mind. Libyan state television has again reported today that NATO has hit civilian targets and killed civilians. I know these reports are somewhat specious sometimes, but can you address that? Have you seen those reports, and has NATO done any investigation as to whether that actually occurred?
Yeah, the information we got out of theater, so from the commander in Naples, is that we can confirm that there was an airstrike yesterday in that region. However, it was 21 kilometers southwest of the town that was mentioned on Libya TV, Kikla. And the target that was that were 2 tanks. So this differs significantly from what the Libyan-run state television reported, because they reported about a strike in the town of Kila. So it's reasonable to assess that this report is a misinformation and is not in line with what has been reported in NATO.
And as you know, it is a rule for us that NATO takes all the necessary measures to minimize the number of victims and, of course, I mean, to avoid civilian casualties. That's it? No,
Earlier, you were asked about to respond to the criticism from the French and British ministers calling for NATO to intensify their efforts. You've said NATO has destroyed 49 tanks. So do you disagree with the ministers, foreign ministers of France and Britain, saying that NATO needs to do more? Has NATO not done enough?
Yeah, the thing I would like to say is the same answer as I gave to the previous question, that we as NATO, we have to execute this mission with the assets provided by the nations. And I think so far we're doing a pretty good job and protecting the civilians by taking out the biggest threat, I would like to say. And when you look what we have done in a very high operational tempo over the last few days, taking out numerous tanks, taking out armored personnel carriers, destroying ammunition storages, I think with the assets we have, we're doing a great job.
Yeah, what is obvious is that we are enforcing NATO operations with vigor and determination within our current mandate. And as the General just said, I mean, our operation tempo is high.
Rafael Cañas from the Spanish news agency, EFE. General, when you say with the assets we have, we are doing a great job, do you imply that you could do a better job with more assets? Thank you.
With the assets we have, we're doing a great job, and we fulfill our mission. So it's not for us to say that we need more.
And we are enforcing the mandate that has been given to us by the United Nations with 3 operations, and for the time being, I mean, we are conducting that operation with a very clear and strong determination.
I think when you look at the mission, the arms embargo is in effect. The no-fly zone is effective. We are protecting the civilians. So we are executing our mission.
Follow up, please. But if you had, let's say, 40, 60, 80 more fighters, you could do you a better job?
Well, I think the answer is clear. If you get more, you can do more.
But we have 200 planes, so, I mean, right now we can conduct operations under very high tempo, having the assets, using the assets we have at our disposal. I think that finishes our briefing. We see you on Thursday in Berlin. Thank you.